room at the end of the hallway. I know this is a bit crazy, but I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me when I was in high school. It was a field trip to an abandoned asylum, and it was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I was never a fan of horror movies or anything like that, but I was always up for an adventure. So when my class announced that we were going on a field trip to an abandoned asylum, I was excited. I had heard stories about the place, and I was curious to see it for myself. The asylum had been closed for over 20 years, and it was rumored to be haunted. It was located in a remote area, and the only way to get there was by bus. The ride was long and quiet, and the atmosphere was tense. Everyone on the bus was whispering and talking about the stories they had heard about the asylum. When we finally arrived at the asylum, it was even more creepy than I had imagined. The buildings were old and dilapidated, and the windows were boarded up. The grounds were overgrown with weeds, and there was a thick silence in the air. Our teacher gave us a tour of the asylum, and he told us some of the stories about the people who had been there. He said that many of the patients had been subjected to cruel and unusual experiments, and that some of them had even died. We were allowed to explore the asylum on our own, but we were warned to stay together and not to go anywhere alone. I was with a group of my friends, and we were all having a good time exploring. We were laughing and joking around, and we weren't really taking the place seriously. But then, something happened. We were walking down a hallway when we heard a noise. It was like a scratching sound, and it was coming from a room at the end of the hallway. We all stopped and looked at each other. We were all scared, but we were also curious. One of my friends, a boy named Michael, decided to go check it out. Michael opened the door and peeked inside. The room was dark, and we couldn't see anything. Michael took a step inside, and then he stopped. "What is it?" I asked. Michael didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring into the darkness. "Michael, what's wrong?" I asked again. Michael still didn't say anything. He just slowly started to back out of the room. "Michael, what did you see?" I asked. Michael didn't answer. He just turned and ran down the hallway. We all followed Michael back to the group. We were all shaken up, and we didn't want to stay in the asylum any longer. We told our teacher what had happened, and he decided to take us back to the bus. We all got on the bus and didn't look back. I still don't know what Michael saw in that room, but I know it was something that scared him to the core. I've never been so terrified in my life, and I've never been back to the asylum. The abandoned asylum. It all started on a gloomy, overcast morning when I was in middle school. Our teacher had planned a field trip to an old, abandoned asylum in the outskirts of our town. Little did we know that it would turn into a day we'd never forget. As our school bus pulled up to the sprawling, decaying building, a sense of foreboding settled over the entire class. The asylum, which had been shut down for decades, was rumored to have a dark and sinister history. Patients had reportedly suffered inhumane treatments, and the place was said to be haunted. Our teacher, Mr. Johnson, was an enthusiastic history buff. He led us through the dimly lit hallways, sharing spine-chilling stories about the asylum. We walked past cells with rusty bars and peeling paint, remnants of a forgotten era. As we explored further, strange things started happening. We heard faint whispers, the echoing laughter of children, and the occasional distant cry. Our classmates exchanged nervous glances, but Mr. Johnson assured us that it was just our overactive imaginations playing tricks on us. After a few hours of exploration, we came across a door unlike the others. It was sturdy and made of steel, with an imposing lock. Mr. Johnson seemed strangely interested in it. He fumbled with his keys and, after a few attempts, the door creaked open. It revealed a long, narrow corridor leading further into the asylum's depths. As we ventured deeper into the corridor, the air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled upon us. Shadows moved in strange, unnatural ways, and the whispers grew louder. Some of my classmates began to panic and demanded that we leave, but Mr. Johnson was strangely determined to press on. Then, we started seeing apparitions, the ghostly figures of patients who had suffered within these walls. They reached out to us with bony, skeletal hands, their eyes hollow and lifeless. Some of us screamed, while others were frozen in fear. As panic gripped the group, we turned and ran, retracing our steps through the maze of hallways. The eerie sounds followed us, and it felt like the asylum itself was trying to keep us within its grasp. Finally, we burst through the front doors, gasping for breath. The bus driver was shocked to see the state we were in, and we told him to drive away as fast as he could. We never saw Mr. Johnson again. To this day, that field trip still haunts my nightmares. What happened in that asylum remains a mystery. Was it truly haunted, or was Mr. Johnson hiding something sinister? I'll never know for sure, but one thing's certain. I'll never forget the chilling day we spent at the abandoned asylum, a place where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and the horrors of the past came to life. The disappearing forest. It all began when our biology teacher, Miss Anderson, announced a trip to a remote, densely wooded area known as the Whispering Forest. The forest had earned its eerie nickname due to the strange sounds that seemed to emanate from deep within, almost like faint whispers that rustled the leaves and branches. As we entered the forest, the towering trees blocked out most of the daylight, casting an otherworldly, dappled light on the forest floor. Miss Anderson led us deeper into the woods, her excitement palpable. She explained that our mission was to collect samples of rare fungi for a class project. Our group ventured further and further into the forest, following what seemed to be a well-worn trail. But as we collected samples, I couldn't help but notice that the path behind us had seemingly disappeared. Panic began to set in as we realized that we were lost, with no idea of which way to go to get back. With each passing minute, the forest grew eerier. The whispers became more distinct, almost as if the trees themselves were trying to communicate. We heard our own names whispered, and some even claimed to have seen shadowy figures. Miss Anderson reassured us that it was just our imagination playing tricks on us. As the hours ticked by, we noticed something even more unsettling. Our group was slowly dwindling in size. Classmates were vanishing, one by one, without a trace. Fear gripped us as we called out their names, but there was no response. It was as though the forest had swallowed them whole. In a state of sheer terror, the remaining few of us huddled together. It was then that we saw something that chilled us to the bone. Emerging from the shadows, we spotted the missing classmates, but they were not the same. Their eyes were vacant, and their faces bore expressions of terror. They seemed like mere apparitions of our former friends. We had no choice but to run for our lives. The forest seemed to shift and change around us, making escape nearly impossible. The whispers turned into anguished cries, and it felt as though the very trees were closing in on us. In a final act of desperation, we stumbled upon a clearing and somehow found our way back to the edge of the forest. We were safe but forever scarred by what we had experienced.